Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. We'll move start. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have apologies from councillors Lawson, Harker and Fearon. Have we any more? Thank you. Declaration of interest. To receive declarations of the existence and nature of any private interests or disclosure don't accumulate any other registrable interests in any matter to be considered or being considered. No, thank you. Item 3, minutes. Recommendation of public minutes C117/09/22 to CL/127/09/22, the meeting of the council held on the 22nd of September 2022 be confirmed and signed as correct proceedings. I'll propose from the chair. Could I have a second, please? Second, Chair. Is everybody in agreement? Anybody against? Thank you. Chair's announcements. Brief. I have one today. Eden District Council has been notified today by the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities that it has been awarded 1.3 million grant funding to improve the condition of homes in the private rented sector. The funding will provide help and support to both tenants and landlords and use inspection and enforcement where necessary to improve properties and the health and well-being of the tenants across the new Westmoreland and Furness area. I attended Keswick Mountain Rescue reception at my house in Bassingthwaite. We had a music event in the chamber and we raised £408 for the charities. I attended Cumbria University graduation at Carlisle Cathedral on Tuesday. Just an announcement, the last Eden Chairman's carol service will be held on the 12th of December at 6:30 at St Andrews. It would be nice if we had as many councillors as possible at the last one. And it is for charity, so if you've got a spare £50 note under the mattress, it's appreciated. Thank you. Item number 5, questions by the public. I think we have one from Councillor Davis. Would you like to read the question, please?
Thank you. Does the leader agree that when we act as councillors, especially in public council meetings, we must be fully accountable and responsible for the words we use and the message given?
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So, councillors are indeed responsible and accountable for what they say at all times. The same words can, however, convey a range of different messages to different audiences. In writing, the words and phrases used can be carefully prepared to ensure the meaning is unambiguous and as near as possible universal. In speaking, however, there is not time for that editing process. Things can be said which create meanings and implications in the listener which were unintended by the speaker. The gap between what's meant and what received can be considerable and on occasion can cause problems. At that point, responsibility and accountability are delivered through apologies and explanations and a reminder to self that full rehearsal is always preferable, however overstretched members and officers are at the current time. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do indeed. This council has held me accountable on multiple occasions for comments I have made, even in a personal capacity. Yet at the cabinet meeting of this council held on Tuesday in Appleby, yourself as leader spoke in that capacity as leader of this council and made a statement on the changes to Eden Council staff and the employment moving over to the new Westmoreland and Furness Council in April 23. As the leader, you then added that not all staff, particularly the officers of Eden Council, would have roles at the new Westmoreland and Furness Council, and in adding what can only be described as a bullying and intimidatory statement by yourself as leader of Eden Council towards these officers. The statement made by yourself as leader about officers for not having the posts at Westmoreland and Furness Council of they only have themselves to blame is summed up, I understand, by a statement yourself have made in the local rag this week, with the leader saying of your comments, they can't be defended. As leader of Eden Council, you then described the comments as a spontaneous joke. Sitting in that cabinet meeting, I observed no one laughing at the comments made by yourself. In fact, I witnessed pain, anger and betrayal on the faces of officers of this council to the comments made by yourself, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Davis is...
I'm going to go to my question now, Chair, if I may.
Thank you.
I put my question to this entire council through yourself, Councillor Taylor. Can you continue to allow a person who has shown such disregard for staff welfare with such comments and evidently sees the future of this staff employment as a joke to remain the leader of this council, or will members stand up to the intimidatory and bullying actions of the leader of this council with a vote of no confidence in Councillor Taylor as leader of Eden District Council for her undefendable actions in the role as leader? I call on members of this council to use Eden Council's own constitution at 10.11 to hold a vote of no confidence in this meeting, the full council as the appropriate committee of this council on that question.
What is the question?
The question is, the vote of no confidence in Councillor Virginia Taylor as leader of Eden Council.
Sit down, that's not a question.
It's not a question.
It's a disgraceful intervention as well.
Member of the public interfering in a meeting where I'm asking a question of this council. Now, are you going to point to that one, Chair?
No. You can ask a question of the leader, but you cannot ask a question of this
I've asked a
council.
question of this council through the leader. As it's set out in this council's constitution, at 10.11, members have the right to move that a question asked by a member of the public be put to a vote. And I'm sure any one of the officers can explain what 10.11 within the constitution states.
You have to ask the question to the leader. A direct question to the leader.
Councillor Taylor, do you believe this council, Councillor Taylor, the question I'm asking is, should this council continue to have confidence in you as the leader of Eden Council for your appalling comments made at the cabinet meeting in Appleby last week?
You have misreported my comments, and the answer is yes, the council have had confidence.
Agenda item number 6, question by members, and there are none tonight. Agenda item 7, motion to notice, there are none tonight. Agenda item number 8, allocation seats on committees and working groups. Since under no portfolio, so I will introduce the report. The purpose of the report is to propose the distribution of seats in accordance with the rules of political proportionality and to make appointments to the committee for the remainder of the 2022-23 municipal year. The recommendations are that the proposed allocation of seats is set out in this report be approved. The appointment of members to committees as set out in Appendix 2 be approved. The appointment of members to working groups as set out in Appendix 3 be approved. The Green Group and Labour Group adopt a reciprocal arrangement where the nominated members can act as a standing deputy. I would like to propose the recommendations. Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Are there any questions from members? All in agreement? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Agenda item number 9 is a single site programme. Consider report number DCE 55/22 and Deputy Chief Executive and Interim Director of Resources, which seeks to provide an update on the construction programme of the Reader House and to identify funding for its completion. I would like to ask the Councillor to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'd quite like to call Councillor Karen, who's better than Griffin. Good evening, everybody. It has been a long-held ambition of Eden District Council for at least the last 10 years to address the problems associated with the maintenance and accessibility of the Mansion House and the Town Hall. Beautiful and prestigious as they are, both buildings have problems. They are not easily accessible for anybody with mobility difficulties. They are expensive to maintain in terms of building fabric and increasingly expensive because of escalating heating costs. It is more important than ever now to keep a central hub of local service provision in Eden. The new unitary authority covers a huge area as far as Barrow, and the new council has agreed to use the Reader House as an anchor building for its purposes for the future. The building will be a fit-for-purpose exemplar in that it will provide office and meeting space for members and officers and public sector partners, maintaining a strong Eden presence for the new unitary authority. A building that achieves Passive House standard in terms of being carbon neutral and a building that significantly reduces current operating costs and more than pays for itself in its savings on the public purse. The initial revenue savings projections on utility costs for Reader House over a 25-year period were estimated at £1.02 million. Given the significant increase in utility costs, the estimates have been recalculated at £4.8 million. All-inclusive cost savings over 25 years have increased from £6.18 million to £10.7 million. It makes a sensible and solid business case to complete this project. It is an investment in a valuable asset in our area, securing jobs and social and economic well-being for the future. There have been some technical issues with the build over the summer that have slowed the programme, and these need to be explained as there are cost implications. Asbestos was discovered behind the outer concrete cladding tiles, and further asbestos was uncovered in the foundations. This has now all been removed and disposed of carefully, and clean air certificates have been issued. The concrete support pillars were found to have been compromised by previous building occupants or contractors and required a temporary bracing to allow the construction to recommence safely. Steel reinforcement is needed as a solution to strengthen the building, and this is now being installed. The The concrete support pillars and floors were tested for carbonisation and need to be treated by applying a protective coating to them. This is all in hand. The costs of materials and labour are affected by inflation in the construction sector. This is because of the conflict in the Ukraine, the government's handling of the pandemic and the rises in fuel and utilities costs. The construction contract sum for the contract is £2.9 million, which did include a £200,000 contingency for unexpected construction issues that are not accounted for. So the estimated cost of inflation now represents an increase of £800,000 and adjustments for the construction issues and extended programme £677,000, resulting in an increased contract sum of £1.47 million. It is proposed to pay for this extra cost from an increase in capital receipts, which generates an additional £500,000 and a combination of programme slippage and additional funding. We are confident that the in-depth analysis undertaken by the project team and the contractor supply chain means that we do not anticipate any need to allocate further additional funding in future. We are very much looking forward to seeing the finished building in spring 2023. And so, Chair, I move the recommendation that Council note progress on the delivery of the key project objectives, that Council approves the variation in the capital programme to enable the completion of the project as detailed in section 8.3, and that Council approves the amendment in funding as set out in 8.5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I invite a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Have we questions from members? Councillor Lynch.
Well, some experience in construction building. Now, when the contractor signs up for it, and there's a £200,000 contingency plan, I believe that you'd stick to that. It's remiss of this council to allow one for whom. They should have anticipated this in the surveys. I think it's absolutely scandalous. Somebody's overlooked this.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. You said in your speech, Councillor Greenwood, that when you were talking about funding, that partial funding would come from an increase in capital receipts. Can you expand on that?
This is something we're trying.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, we're anticipating some additional funding through sale of land. I don't think at this point I can be more specific than that, but we are anticipating additional funds from land sales.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Chair, I have 3 questions, if I may, before I'll ask them down and perhaps answer in between. The first is that paragraph 5.3 of the report says that the council approved a procurement process in October 2021. Now, I looked for this. Report CE 1221 was considered by Cabinet on the 7th of October 21, and the recommendations approved included an invitation to Council to authorise the current procurement process, and that Council approved the variation of the capital programme for Loria House. Now, I can't find any public record of decisions on that recommendation by Council, and I looked at the agenda and minutes of Council meetings held on the 25th of November and 27th of January following the executive meeting. Now, I would have expected that these items to go on the agenda of Council and to be duly discussed, decided on, and recorded in the minutes of the meeting, but that doesn't appear to have happened. So there's a gap, I think, here, and if the Cabinet's recommendations were approved, who did so, and where is the public record of that? I mean, that's my first question.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Nicholson. That will take quite a bit of checking up on. So I thank you for your question, and I just say that I will get back to you with a written answer. Thank you.
So we don't know, in other words. Right. My second question is that I understand that there wasn't a competitive tendering process for Bonita House, as I believe 5 prospective bidders withdrew. Why was this? And is it the case that the council's procurement rules were vague? And are there any penalty clauses in the contracts for slippage and late completion?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll cover that one about the tendering process. The tendering process was competitive. We did go out to tender. We had 5 expressions of interest, and you're right that 4 of those potential tenderers did withdraw, but that was within a competitive tendering process. We were left with a single compliant bid which did go forward, but that was within our procurement rules, and procurement rules have been adhered to.
And my third and final question is, why is the information about the finance and the cost of the project given by the resources portfolio holder tonight, not in the report? Because the information in section 8 is rather difficult to follow, and it doesn't mention what the total final cost is. Well, we rely on memory for what to say rather than what we should have in our report. So why wasn't it in the report?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Nicholson. I understand that you are a member of the Single Site Working Party and also a member of the Finance Scrutiny Group. Is that right?
I'm a member of both. Yes, I'm a member of both, but I wasn't at the last meeting of the Finance Scrutiny Committee, and the Single Site Committee has met infrequently over the course of this calendar year. So there have been very limited opportunities for members to receive comment on this. Thank you.
But I understand that there were opportunities for you to attend and receive the information that you are now requesting in Council. So all of these matters were brought up and discussed in depth at both of those meetings, which you had an opportunity to attend, and you chose not to. So that's entirely your choice, Councillor Nicholson. And although I understand that you are now requesting the information was supplied in those meetings. So if you will allow me, I will send you a written answer to your question. Thank you.
I would like that, but I think my concern is that the attendance at those meetings is limited and not the entire council.
Your first question, Councillor Nicholson, Mr Sutton's found the answer for you.
That's fine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the change of budget for Verida House was included in Quarter 2 monitoring revised budget 21-22 and MTFP, which was on the 25th of November 2021.
Councillor Hicks.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, I find it a bit confusing when you buy a house, you get a structural survey done. Was at no point the asbestos picked up on a structural survey prior to purchase?
Through you, Chair, Yes, there were a number of technical surveys that were carried out on the building prior to purchase and prior to construction. One of those was an asbestos survey in particular that did identify some asbestos within the building. That was identified and that was removed as part of the construction programme. The two additional elements of asbestos that were subsequently found legitimately couldn't have been picked up by that survey, which is done by a professionally competent company, because effectively the asbestos in the building was effectively hidden within the structure of the building, which could not have been identified until effectively the building was pulled apart. And also the asbestos materials that was found in the undercroft foundations also could not have been identified through that survey. So I'm satisfied that the asbestos survey that was carried out prior to purchase was correct and in line with best practice, and the additional asbestos that has been identified subsequently could not have been identified through that approach.
But being a 60s building, there could have been an assumption that there was asbestos in more places than one.
How do we, Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. I do have one question. I'd just like to make a comment first as to what Councillor Greenwood has said. I'm also a member of the single site task group and also finance scrutiny, and there has not been opportunity, as you state, for the members to attend single site meetings. For 18 months they've been cancelled again and again and again, and when it is at your, can you hear me? When it is when you want them, we're given 3 days, 4 days notice, so we might not be able to attend. So you really should withdraw that comment about that we haven't had access to all the meetings. There were meetings. Can I go your question?
Yeah.
Can Councillor Greenwood respond to that first, and you can ask a question? You also respond.
Councillor Ryland, you're wrong.
No, no. Right. I've got a good memory, Councillor Greenwood. My question, please, is with the grant of the 862,000, the zero carbon grant, what surveys, statutory surveys, were required of the Reed House in order to gain that grant?
There was no surveys required as part of that government grant funding. The grant funding, just to remind members, was intended to cover the additional costs for upgrading the building from a standard build to a low carbon build. It wasn't in relation to the standard general construction and demolition of the building. So while surveys were carried out, as I say, for pre-purchase requirements and for pre-construction requirements, none of those surveys were required by the SALEX funding process as part of the grant allocation.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharp?
Chair, it was just in response to the single site meetings. I can't comment on the finance scrutiny, but I'm a member of the single site working group, and it was just to say that we met 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and there was apologies. No, there wasn't apologies given, sorry. And with regard to organising meetings, we've always had fair notice. If there wasn't a meeting needed or if more information needed to be gathered, we were told in enough time as far as I'm concerned. And I've got a young family and I've got a lot of stuff to organise, and it's always been enough notice for me, but that's a personal comment. So, yeah.
Councillor Nicholson, do you wish to respond to your lights up?
Yes, please. Sorry, may I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. Right. Yes. I mean, I think with this project, there's been very limited open debate in council about it. There's been discussions and it's been on the agenda at 3 budget meetings, to my recollection. And I think there's only been 2, possibly 3 actual papers that come. I think it's also disappointing that there has been no involvement of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And when I raised this previously, I was told that the members' working group was a proxy for scrutiny. Now, it could not be that because members of the executive were members of that group, and as you know, members of the executive are not permitted to be involved in scrutiny. So I think that's rather a spurious claim. The claim that the project will be completed by 31st of March 2023, I think, is extremely ambitious given the present state of the building. Those who pass it regularly, as I do, will know that there's not much more than the basic structure and the floors, and there's been some groundworks and so on going on over the past few weeks. But given the complexity of the project and the tendency to have in-hospital weather between now and the end of March, then I think it's very, very unlikely it will be completed. And indeed, if it is, then if it is completed, commissioned and occupied by staff on the 31st of March 2023, I will personally pledge the sum of £250 to the Chairman's Charity Fund. And you can put that in the minutes. And it might be a still make donation, but it won't be not so much if it's not completed.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Oh, sorry.
And I think, we are where we are with this project. But I believe that it's been driven by blind and dogmatic commitment to the new agenda. There really hasn't been adequate commitment to involving members and also consideration of costs. Now, I think we're so far into this that we can't withdraw now. So we are, as I say, we are where we are. But there are, a lot of questions, about it. And it's simply likely that Westmoreland and Lonsdale councils are going to inherit an incomplete building with a lot of questions around the adherence to the Constitution and the due process commitment and procurement and all of that. And it may well be that their scrutiny committee will want to see something. And finally, members will probably, those who were around at the time, will be aware that in 2010, when the Inland Revenue were about to vacate the project, we, Eden Council, were offered it. And we made a number of inquiries. And among the responses we got was, don't touch it, it's a money pit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson, and I will assure you I'll be round to the site for them tomorrow. Councillor Taylor.
I will gladly sign.
Are you at the debate yet? I'll be debating. I'm not going to ask questions, I'm going to make comments. Is that okay?
Yes, we've already.
You already, yeah. Okay, thank you. I think it's without a doubt that it's not been a perfect process. No process is perfect. That there are and have been anomalies. Communication could have been better. Whether this is the most cost-effective way for providing a building, I don't know. But the reality is, as my colleague Councillor Nicholson has said, we are where we are. So shortly we're going to vote on the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. So I'm generally in favour of this project and the concept behind it. And it's been proven to be so by the way circumstances have worked out that none of us could have anticipated Westmoreland Furnace was going to have an anchor building policy. That would have been maybe what we would have wanted to happen. And you look at the objectives under 3 and 4, I mean, those objectives have been fulfilled. To say whether it's the most cost-effective way of actually going about fulfilling them, I don't know. I don't feel qualified. I'm not a surveyor, I'm not a builder or anything else, but I am an observer of reality, and it is what it is. The building, if it is complete, and I'm sure it will be, whether it be the 31st of March, that's a silly one, for the sake of the charity it is. It will be fit for purpose. It will be, it's in itself cost effective. The savings, are bound to be made. There is no way that they won't be because of the energy prices and utility prices and the savings that are going to be made. I mean, my concerns would be, we talk about the single site, but of course this isn't a fait accompli, is it? Because we haven't actually got just one building. We've still got the other 2. So we're still talking about town, we're still talking about mansion house, and those are a bit of a grey area. And whether there will be any additional costs. I mean, our hope is that there won't be. But you never know, as we've already discovered. But I'm looking forward to the future. I think it's really important we do have a hub that is fit for purpose, where we can gather together all the local officers and retain that employment in Penrith, and have a service for our residents and staff, and somewhere that is ideal, hopefully, for them to work. So, I accept the way it is, and I wouldn't want to criticise colleagues or fellow councillors. I think we should just simply press on and make the very, very best of this, because that is the best way forward for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to agree wholeheartedly? Mr. Sutton, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I'm taking this back a step. Councillor Nicholson, on your question about why it hasn't been to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, it sits because it's a capital project and because there's a change in budget squarely within the terms of reference from the Finance Scrutiny Committee, and that's why the report went to the Finance Scrutiny Committee last week, 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. Have any other questions?
Sorry, Chair, and he's coming to the next Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well.
About the final comment?
Councillor Ross first, please.
Thank you. I'd like to associate myself with the words of Councillor Dew earlier. I think that this project is something that will have long-lasting and very positive effects for Penrith as a town in terms of its visual and building quality, because it really couldn't be much worse, that building, than what we started with. And I think it will be greatly improved. But more importantly, I think it's so important that Penrith is host to a really cutting-edge project to create a passive house standard upgrade of a commercial building, which I believe is the first in the country. So it really is something that will get a lot of good attention and will very much put the initiative of both this council but also the town on the map for taking this really important step. So, and I also think that the benefit of being able to demonstrate that this sort of retrofit can be done effectively, even to what seemed like a hopeless building, is really an important demonstration that hopefully will have wider inspiration for planners and architects and those practitioners who are looking at improving our building stock, both in the public and in the private sector. So I think all those things are important benefit. I'd just like to make an additional comment about the additional costs that come in this project. Things like asbestos are very hard by their nature to identify early on at survey stage, and I know that as someone who's worked in in a sort of element of the building industry myself, and I just actually feel quite thankful that in this case the building was in the hands of a responsible body who was watching this process very carefully, because had the building fallen into the hands of perhaps someone in the private sector who was not going to deal so well with asbestos, it is potentially an extremely hazardous and dangerous situation, both for the public but also for the operatives and the people who are working on that site. So I think, in a way, we should be grateful that public funds have been used to make sure that that very hazardous situation has been dealt with correctly and safely. So I think we should just bear that in mind when we're thinking about whether that was a good use of funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll take you in the vote. Yeah.
It's a complete bullshit. The public thinks so as well.
Yes.
It's a very good morning.
Councillor Connell?
Sorry, Chair, I'd just like to make the point that I think I'm correct in saying that if this project works out as intended, it will be the first time in history that Penrith has actually had a building that was intended for local government. We have to realise that this building was a private house that was converted into the urban district headquarters, and we're sitting in a ballroom, we're not sitting in a council chamber. Likewise, the mansion house, of course, from which the rural district council used to operate, was an 18th century mansion too. So that's been part of the problem. And if this comes to fruition, we will at long last have a purpose-built local government hub.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote. If that's okay, the recommendations are to note progress on the delivery of the key project objectives, approves the variation in the capital programme to enable the completion of the project as detailed in section 8.3 of the report, approves the amendment in funding as set out in 8.5 of the report. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Thank you. Go on to agenda items. Result is carried.
Have you forgotten?
Do you want numbers? 21 for, 11 against, 2 abstentions. Agenda item 10, leisure contract pressures. To consider report on the DOR 91/22 of the Interim Director of Resources, which seeks to consider pressures identified by Greenwich Leisure Limited DLL, and consider making an additional one-off payment to support them with significant additional energy costs they are borne due to the current economic circumstances. I ask Councillor Greenwood to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider financial pressures identified by Greenwich Leisure Limited, GLL, and consider making an additional one-off payment to support them, given the significant additional energy costs that they have borne due to the current economic circumstances. The Council has worked closely with its contracted leisure services provider, GLL, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, where it provided significant financial support to cover their losses due to centre closures. The Council recognises that prior to COVID, the contract was loss-making, but GLL had made significant inroads into the size of the deficit, which at that point was around £200,000. As part of the 2022 to 23 budget process, the council set aside £200,000 in an earmarked reserve, recognising the pressure that GLL were under at the time, which was prior to the economic effects currently being faced. We have worked with GLL to consider a number of potential mitigations. However, many, and certainly those that save the most money, would also result in service reductions. The Council and GLL are committed to maintaining and, where possible, improving the services provided. This is particularly important at this time when access to services that support health and well-being is critical. Council notes the result of public disappointment recently in nearby areas where services were withdrawn and leisure centres were closed. Whilst the longer-term future of the contract will fall to Westmoreland and Furness Council, it is really important that Eden District Council passes on a contract that is functioning as well as it possibly can. In order to do this, GLL have sought financial support from the Council for the additional costs of energy for 2022 to 23 caused by the current inflationary impacts in the market. The ask has been through an open book process and the total increase is £325,000. The impact of not supporting them would result in GLL seeking to mitigate through measures such as reducing centre opening times and above inflationary increases in fees and charges. If approved, the earmarked reserve would be used to fund the £200,000 and the additional amount met from general reserves. It should be noted that the proposal is for a one-off payment and not an increase in the contract. This therefore does not require a Section 24 report to Westmoreland and Furness Council. I am happy to move the recommendations that it is recommended that the Council approve a one-off payment of £325,000 to GLL in recognition of the additional energy costs that they have borne in 22 to 23, and the additional payment to be funded by a combination of earmarked reserve, £200,000, and general reserve, £125,000. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Greenwood. Could I invite a second, please? Councillor Sharp, thank you. Councillor Wicks is first. Councillor Wicks?
Yes, thank you, Chair. While I have every sympathy with people in the current cost of living crisis, is this council also going to step up for its other contractors, such as your waste contractor, who's will have had huge increases in their costs due to the price of fuel? I just find it astounding that we are going to start stepping up for our contractors. And if so, is there going to be equality across our contractors?
Through you, Chair. We haven't been approached by our other key contractors.
But you don't think you will now? I know you've got plenty in reserves.
And we will deal with that on a similar basis in terms of discussion, open understanding, and then, if necessary, coming through our processes in respect of any necessary decisions.
Councillor Lynch?
First of all, I'd like to ask, who's responsible for the lighting on the car park of the leisure centre? Is it the leisure centre? I'll tell you why I ask that. It's a light burns 24 hours, it's street lamp burns 24 hours a day. They must have money to burn, people. Now, this additional expenditure
Well, you didn't sign a contract as most people, fuel users do. What was the terms of that contract? When did it run out? Should know that.
Through Chair, the contract they have is a purchasing contract, so it's a purchasing contract where they buy essentially buy in bulk. So it is variable, so it's a variable contract, so it's not fixed to a particular term, and that is the way that bigger private sector companies buy their energy.
I'm not related to that.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I noted that in the past couple of days, press reports by PLL's parent company that they intend to reduce the hours at some 200 leisure centres around the country, although the locations of these centres have not been specified. If we give this money to GLL, over what period is it intended to cover? And two, is it ring-fenced for Appleby and Penrith leisure centres? And as a result, will they be immune from any reductions in service hours?
It's to the end of March, and yes, they will.
We have that assurance.
Any more questions? Councillor Gill.
Well, a question and a comment. Am I able to do both together? Thank you, Chair. I did ask for clarification at the Finance Scrutiny Committee that we were talking about 325,000 in addition to the 200,000 that had already been committed. Is that correct? Maybe a payment. So the 325k in addition to the 200k. Okay, that's fine. So it's the total that's going to them will be 325k. You did make a comment about this being a functional contract, which at 3.2 you made the point that it wasn't actually functioning before COVID. So since then we've had COVID, and now we've got the cost of living crisis. In what ways is a functioning contract? So what you're going to hand over to the Westmoreland Furnace Council is a contract that isn't functioning because they are not making this business pay. You say it's a one-off payment of 325k, but what's going to change in the meantime? So presumably this will be a payment that will have to be made every year, ongoing. It's a bit of a liability to offload onto the Westmoreland Furnace Council, which, as you know, is currently predicting the budget gap of £19 million. So I would like a little bit of clarification about that. So we're actually talking about, and I'm not against the idea of providing subsidised facilities for people to be active in, but it only can be done on a short-term basis, can't it? Thank you.
Through the Chair. So I'll start off wearing my Eton hat. I may switch to our Westmoreland Furnace hat. But I think in terms of the contract, the function in that is delivering the services that are within the contract. Clearly, for this year, the increased energy costs are 325,000. That's what we included. And you're right, there will be, unless prices change, a similar increase in future years. So Westmoreland Furnace will be made aware of that, and we are made aware that there is a pressure, just like they'll be made aware that there are pressures right across the seven sovereign authorities. Indeed, those pressures are built into the two budget caps that currently sit within the two authorities. So there is opportunity and work already going on. So if I look into what work's happening with Westmoreland Furnace, there is work that is ongoing with portfolio holders in terms of savings and where we can make savings to close those budget gaps. So that is an integral part of the budget, just as it would be an integral part of Eden's budget if we were going to continue It will need to be considered, decisions will need to be made. The decisions switch to being Westmoreland Furness's decisions rather than EDC's decisions.
Is there any way of improving the energy efficiency of the buildings in question? Because I mean, we're just going to be spending more money paying for lighting. The sensible way, as you've done with Frida House, is to try and utilise money and invest it in order to save energy rather than keep on tipping money down a big black hole. Thank you.
Councillor Dew. Yeah, we're in the process of having the leisure centres do an energy efficiency programme on to see where we can make savings, see where we can do better insulation and better energy efficiency. And that hopefully is going to be carried out pretty soon. Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, comment, Chair. I've looked online and I've seen the refurbishment of the gymnasium, and I think it looks really, really good, and it's going to be good for all the residents, for the villages from Penrith around. I tried in the scrutiny committee to draw down on the reasons as to why we keep giving money to this company. At this point, I would like to state that for 3 of the 4 years of this term of the council, I have been the outside representative for the council to sit on GLL. In that time, there has never been a single meeting called, and neither through Zoom, when we had the COVID, there was never a single meeting called through COVID. I know that this council has been addicted to consultants through its term, which I am not really in favour of, rather a person who's given a job and a contract given as well. But I do feel at this moment in time that this is a failed business model. I've been in business myself, and it seems a bottomless pit. You mention at 3.4 that you worked with GLL to mitigate, and we really don't know. One of the mitigations came up with Councillor Dew that we didn't know about getting the better lighting in to save power. I also find that this amount of staggering money for electricity costs seems extremely high. And all in all, with the last item on the agenda this evening, 1.47 million, this item asking for more money, I'm extremely sad that we couldn't support our residents when I put forward that motion for the 39 villages to receive, just for the paltry sum of £245,000, they would get what you want, Councillor Taylor, one of your main sustainability. They'd get the garden recycling. So I would like Eden Council to actually send consultants in to GLL and find out how we can make it a better business model. And then, and I'm doing this for the future, for the new council as well, because I have taken an interest being the outside representative, and there's been no information whatsoever. I do hope we take that on board.
Thank you. Councillor Wicks?
Yes, I'd just like to bring to present council's attention in 2014, in July 2014, there was a renewable energy feasibility study and business case regarding our leisure facilities brought to council by the Communities Director, which spoke of photovoltaic panels and biomass boilers with a supplementary capital estimate of 346,500 approved to fund the schemes. I'd like more information on that, really, in that, has the Hayward Solar Centre not got solar panels? It has. So have we seen the business case for the actual feed-in tariff from the solar panels in compared to current energy costs? Because it just seems to me like we haven't got the information needed to actually approve a payment of an extra 325,000 when we haven't actually seen the costs. And you go online and see that renewable energy feasibility study. It's on our own website.
Have we any more questions?
Chair, could I just speak to Councillor Wicks? Thanks for pointing out that 8 years ago there was energy efficiency installed in the leisure centres. I'm sure that that has helped with the situation that they've been dealing with this year. However, we have an open book process with the leisure centres, so our officers work closely with them to understand where their financial pressures are coming from. So that is a relationship that has been built up over years so that we understand what they are dealing with. It's very important to this council that health and well-being are supported for our residents and that they receive the services that they need in order to exercise, use swimming pools, the gym and things like that. Very, very important. It's very important for all age ranges and it's important for physical health and mental well-being, which has been difficult for the last couple of years. So losing our leisure services is not what we want. So what I'm saying is that this report has been brought to council in good faith on the basis of good information, reliable and trustworthy information that I do not have access to as a resources portfolio holder. I have some information, but not all of it. I don't go and look at people's open books, but officers do. So what I'm saying, Councillor Wicks, is I understand that you are curious about further information, but we don't have that. What we have tonight is a good report based on solid understanding of what is needed to get our services through to the 31st of March, at which point we will no longer exist, but the new council will take over. I understand that GLL have the leisure services in Kendal and South Lakeland, and that's a bigger situation. They have other leisure centres across Cumbria, and that they will be looking at it from a county perspective. So what we're asking council tonight is for £325,000 to get them through this year, so that the leisure centres remain open and our residents receive the services that they need and expect from us to provide. Thank you.
Councillor Lynch.
Can I just respond to that?
It's all right.
Firstly, Councillor Greenwood, I don't like being spoken to like a child. I run a leisure business. I'm a primary manager for a leisure business, so I know the importance of leisure services for people in Eden. In fact, I was instrumental in making sure the leisure services in the equestrian sector were actually boosted this year. So I don't need a condescending attitude about providing leisure services for the people of Eden. I do, however, object to writing blank cheques when we haven't seen the information. You've admitted yourself you haven't seen that information. That's disgusting. You're the portfolio holder. Get the information and let the members see the information.
Here.
Councillor Lynch.
I wanted to make a point, surely the officer's inspector will report to the responsible member. You must have surely their findings.
Why else the scrutiny? You can get to the bottom of it.
Are there any
No
more?
reply, you should reply.
Councillor Nicholson?
I recently received a complaint from a resident about the movement towards solely online booking and payment in advance for use of the services at Penrith and Appleby. Now, the person who complained to me made the point that this was hardly in the interests of people on low incomes who could not anticipate having money 3 or 4 days in advance. And secondly, not in the interests of people who don't have online access facilities. I haven't had any response, to that. And could we include a condition about that? Well, first of all, could I know what the answer to the question I raised is? Because I haven't had an answer. But leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you.
I was at Penrith Leisure Centre on Monday and I was at Appleby Leisure Centre on Saturday. Appleby Leisure Centre don't even take cash, which is very inconvenient. The young person that we were with had cash. He handed it over to the assistant who couldn't put it through the till. He had to keep that cash and use his own card to allow this young person to go swimming. There's something just not quite right there. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, can you go to the vote? I was in Mansion House as a quick comment today, and they informed me that there's been a large increase in membership to Gym Penrith. Can we go to the vote? The recommendations are approve a one-off payment of £325,000 to GLL in recognition of the additional energy costs that were borne in 2022-23. The additional payment to be funded by a combination of earmarked reserves, 200,000 and 200,000 and general reserves of 125,000. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Recommendations are carried. For 18, against 13, abstentions 3. Thank you. Agenda item number 11, to consider report UR 87/22 of the Interim Director of Resources, which seeks the Council to approve the slippage in revenue and capital budgets from 2021-22 to 22-23. Councillor Greenwood, will you introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for slippage in the revenue and capital budgets from the year 2021 to 22 to 22 to 23. The revenue slippage requested is for £206,000, being only 2% of the full year budget. This is to be funded from the provisional underspend reported of £311,000. The majority of the slippage is requested for corporate priorities and other projects where the project has taken slightly longer to develop than anticipated. In most cases, these projects are now fully developed and have started to award grants. In some cases, slippage is requested as contractors were unable to deliver before year end but completed the work shortly after. The explanation for the proposed slippage is at paragraph 3.5 to 3.10 of the report, which is on page 18. Capital projects are often subject to slippage due to external and internal factors. Slippage is requested of £1.3 million. The full list of projects is included in sections 3.11 to 3.23 of the report, which is on page 18 and 19. The slippage includes £464,000 for leisure centre equipment and maintenance, which, due to the complexity of the tender process, was unable to be awarded until post-year end. However, the project has now completed, and the gym at Penrith Leisure Centre now boasts state-of-the-art digitally connected equipment in a fresh environment. The upgrading project for Frenchfield Stadium is progressing with negotiations underway with the Football Foundation for the balance of funding required. £483,000 is requested as slippage across several sustainability projects, supporting residents and businesses to be able to reduce energy consumption. And so, Chair, I move the recommendations that Council approve the slippage of revenue budgets of £206,000 from 21 to 22 to 22 to 23 as set out in section 3.5 and endorsed by Cabinet. Also, that Council approve the slippage of capital budgets of £1,355,000 from 2021 to 22 to 22 to 23 as set out in section 3.11 and endorsed by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I invite a second, please? Councillor Robertson. Have we any questions, please? Councillor Dew.
Just to make a correction to 3.6, second sentence, 21, 22, not 22, 23, first 20. Just to show that we've actually read this. So capital projects going to split from 21, 22 to 22, 23 include the Frenchfield Stadium at 3.21 and the EV charging points at Appleby at 3.22. But at the Finance Scrutiny Committee, we were kind of given the impression that those might also slip further into 23-24. So the question is, and it's a public forum, is if that happens, what guarantee is that the new West Midlands Furnace Shadow Authority will actually fulfil those commitments? Slippage is fine as long as we've got control over what has slipped. But when we lose control, then all our aspirations could turn to nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So when the new West Midlands Friends Council is established after vesting date, the control sits with that authority. At this point in time, the budgets are being built from the Sovereign Authority budgets. Clearly, there will be a process to go through, and the new West Midlands Friends Council will have its own priorities going forward. As I say, at this point in time, those budgets are being used to set the new sort of West Midlands Friends Council's first meeting.
It's true to say that those two projects at this point in time are likely to slip into 23, 24, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor G.
Thank you.
Have we any more questions? We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? 3. Abstentions? 1. Recommendation to pass 32 for, sorry, 3 against, 1 abstention. Thank you. Agenda item 12 is the date of the next scheduled meeting, which will be on Thursday, the 26th of January 2023. The meeting is now closed. Thank you all for your attendance.